morning about a half hour south of Vancouver in the White Rock area. This is very close to the U.S. border. It's a young humpback whale, about 25 feet long, about 3 years old, they figure. Beached itself this morning. Onlookers say that the whale, in their opinion, was alive at the time, but massively entangled in fishing gear. There is netting beside the whale. There are large gashes in the tail of the whale. The whale passed away shortly thereafter, and at this point, DFO and Vancouver Aquarium staff are now trying to formulate a plan as to whether to drag this the unfortunate carcass of this whale.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to point out here is, of course, this is a very tragic event when it happens. Notice here how the mother or guardian is trying to comfort her child here. And, you know, children understand death on a different level than we do, dependent on their age. So I thought I might talk about, just for a second here, what's important to understand when relaying these types of animal deaths to children. So, you know, depending on their age, as I said, it's going to be really the determining factor on how you want to talk to your children about this. So if your child is very young, understand that a lot of young children, 5 and under, believe that death is reversible. So, you know, they live in a cartoon world. They're exposed many times, not in all cases, but to, cartoon world where, we hit a cat over the head or a mouse over the head, and 2 seconds later it pops back to life. So, sometimes they don't understand fully about death and the permanency of death. So, I would suggest that you be very brief, but and instead talk about feelings when you're dealing with a young child. You're dealing with a pre-adolescent and working with someone who might be of the age of let's just say 5 to 10, we're dealing with precognitive reasoning. Children begin to understand things with more clarity and, develop a little bit more abstract thinking. So it is a little bit easier in that way to explain to children that, these things happen, circle of life. However, that does not explain the fact that we should not be sad about this. Of course, we should be very, very sad. If this were my child, would I bring them there to see a beached whale? I don't think I would. I just, I don't think that I would do that. There's enough death that goes on around them that they don't really need to see it. However, if they were there, I guess, if I were put in that situation, then I'd have to deal with it then. We've all had to deal with death in some way or another, whether it's a goldfish or grandma. So this is a very important conversation. And, when dealing with, teenagers and stuff like that, you can almost have a adult conversation with these little wise people. So, keep that on a more respectful level. Understand that their interpretations of death, they don't like to show their feelings as much. And when you're dealing with children of any age, you're going to be dealing with a more physical manifestation of an emotional issue. So you might notice, like, if a child's dog passes away, or cat or family pet of any kind, they might stop eating for a couple of days like they would normally eat. Or they might just have a stomach ache or a headache. So, these are all physical manifestations of an emotional issue. So with that being said, best way that I could suggest to speak to a child about death, animal deaths, and, mass animal deaths even, is really, if the child is young, have them interpret it themselves by journaling or drawing, painting, clay. These things are very therapeutic and cathartic, and the experience that they had could be then interpreted and manifested out to how they can actually express themselves to you. So I also want to talk about how it could relate to, can animals for example, since we're talking about it, predict certain disasters. So let's take a look at this really quick.
Or is there something science can learn from these stories?
Let's go, Kelsey. Come on, we're going to go for a walk.
Yes, good talk. One man believes there is.
I'm not sure who's taken who for a walk on the paths.
Retired Bay Area geologist Jim Birkeland claims to have a formula that uses animal behavior to accurately forecast earthquakes.
What a good dog you are. And you want a treat? You want a treat? Oh, look what I have. I used to just scoff at the idea that animals could do more than what our scientific instruments could. I was taught that all through 10 years of college and university. All the experts said quakes were impossible to predict, so animals were just superfluous. There it is. Oh, boy.
His work is controversial.
Good. I have not been able to get a paper on earthquakes accepted because peer review says what I'm talking about is nonsense. But for 31 years, I've been predicting quakes accurately.
Jim claims to have unraveled the mystery of earthquake prediction in a decidedly unusual way.
This is very
He scours
interesting.
lost pet ads from California newspapers and claims to see sharp spikes in the number of pets gone missing in the days immediately preceding earthquakes.
But anyway, I have the daily records since 1979 of at least 3 major newspapers. And I can tell you what the average is. And when I see the average number of missing cats in the Mercury News for 10 years was 3 or 4, and it went up to 27, that caught my attention.
His biggest claim to fame came during the 1989 Baseball World Series.
The same day, 22nd of September 1989, the dogs went to 57, and they were normally at 15. Meanwhile, we had whales beaching themselves at San Francisco and Santa Cruz. We had homing pigeons getting lost. So all these things were happening at the time of the highest tidal force in 3 years, which I knew was going to happen on October 14th. So on the 13th of October, I called the Gilroy Dispatch to predict a major World Series quake.
So Birkeland actually predicted that quake with some level of accuracy. And, since then, he really has been, a person of reference that we go to. And recently he was on CNN talking about, his predictions. So I do recommend that you look him up and, learn more about him. It's Jim Birkeland. And so basically he's using, missing pets. So if you see a lot of missing pets in your area all of a sudden, I guess his theory is, then when we combine it with the beached whales and the falling birds from the skies, maybe we're onto something. Tell me what you think.